Welcome. Good morning, everybody. And on behalf of the whole GAIN team, I'm excited to welcome colleagues across insurance, investment and financial services to our first GAIN Expo. My name is Andrew Mercer and I'm proud to be part of the team here at GAIN. For those of you that have been following our progress since we launched about 6 months ago, we've been busy working with our founder members and with experts in neurodiversity to put together a program of membership comprising the services that will enable you to maximize the value of neurodiversity, to secure the workforce of the future, and to ensure the future competitiveness of your firm by matching the talent needs of the industry with the skills and capabilities of neurodiverse individuals. Today our Expo is packed full of opportunities to join sessions with experts and hear first-hand stories from organisations and individuals who are leaders forging the way forward for neurodiversity in business to thrive. I'm excited that we've got some major players, including from the FCA, Zurich, Rangam and Chrysalis. You'll also have the opportunity to learn more about GAIN and how membership can help you accelerate neurodiversity in your business. We encourage your participation in the sessions via the chat, the interactive poll, and in the workshops where there'll be a time to explore, discuss, and ask questions. But first up, I'm delighted to introduce to you a pioneer and leader in neurodiversity in business, Dame Stephanie Shirley. Dame Stephanie is an ardent venture philanthropist with an unrelenting energy for creating positive change. She arrived in England as an accompanied child refugee at the start of the Second World War. And in 1962, she started a software business from her dining table, which grew to employ 8,500 people and was ultimately valued at almost $3 billion. Motivated to share the rewards of her success with a society that had extended such generosity to her as a child, Dame Stephanie decided to give away her wealth. And as part of her philanthropy, Dame Stephanie founded Autistica, dedicated to funding research, shaping policy, and working with autistic people to understand their needs. Now in her late 80s, she's driven by a lifetime of extraordinary experiences and achievements, and still dedicates every day to making her life one that was worth saving. So Dame Stephanie, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on leading the way to a diverse, inclusive workplace. Thank you.
My name is Dame Stephanie Shirley, Steve Shirley. I made my reputation and my fortune as a pioneer of the computing industry. I was a woman in a world where women were paid less for the same work, patronised constantly, and promoted only reluctantly, deemed incapable of responsibility. I've first-hand experience, like many women of my generation, of what it's like to suffer discrimination in the workplace. And it's made me deeply committed to ensuring that others don't suffer in the same way. In 1962, I set up one of the first high-tech companies in Britain. Freelance Programmers was a company of women, for women, a software house which recruited professionally qualified women. The company became a success, a painfully slow success to begin with, but it eventually made me, along with many of my staff, a millionaire. Some, at least, of our success was down to the fact that we were also pioneers of diversity in the workplace. Though, to be accurate, we had no workplace as such, since in our earliest days we employed only staff working from home. We pioneered the concept of women going back into the workforce after having children. And to accommodate them, we pioneered the most flexible approach possible to pay and employment. If you worked with us, you could be full-time or part-time. You could be salaried or a consultant. You could choose to work full-time at home in the winter, but switch to part-time working in the office in the summer. You could opt to take more holiday in return for less pay, or take more of your remuneration in the form of pension. Many of our staff were on 0-hour contracts and delighted in the flexibility it gave them. And we delighted in the benefits as well. Our management style was flexible too, and we were not above a little subterfuge. When no one replied to my business development letters, I started to sign them not with that double feminine Stephanie Shirley, but Steve Shirley, so that potential customers would respond. By the time they discovered that Steve was actually a woman, they were already half hooked. Eventually, in 1975, legislation designed to level the playing field for women had the ironic effect of making our pro-female employment policies illegal. But by then, we'd made our point. We were a fine example of what women in the workplace could achieve. We were a standing reproach to the prevailing discrimination, and we were a showcase for the benefit of management flexibility. We were pioneers and effectively positive ones of diversity. Our son Giles was born a year after the company was founded, and it soon became clear that he was autistic. Autism, as I'm sure you know, strikes at the very heart of what we mean by human. People on the autism spectrum may experience a failure to interact or relate socially, an inability to use language to communicate, and an obsessive desire and need for sameness. So it's a spectrum condition. Some people with autism are profoundly learning disabled. Others are able to study and to enjoy subjects from the sciences, mainly computing and maths, and the arts. Autism is one example of the neurodiversity which society has increasingly come to recognize. The many ways in which human beings diverge from some hypothetical norm. Neurodiverse people have valuable and employable skills, yet many remain extremely vulnerable, finding it hard to get into employment and to make friends. Giles was profoundly affected by autism. We cared for him at home for 13 years, though chaos reigned. But when he reached puberty, he became much stronger and more difficult for us to deal with. And he also developed epilepsy, like about a third of people with autism. Eventually, I cracked up, and Giles finished up in an old-fashioned subnormality hospital, an asylum, really. As can so often happen, Giles became institutionalized and lost some of his human rights. And that made us determined to get him back into the community. And so we set up an adult service called Autism at Kingwood. Kingwood is a place near where I live, with Giles as the first resident. Today, Kingwood supports 150 adults whose needs challenge existing services. Later, I set up 3 more charities devoted to caring for autistic children and adults, and to research into the condition. I became a venture philanthropist dedicated to giving away my millions. Nowadays, people often forget my computing credentials, and I'm better known as the Autism Lady. One of the charities I founded is called Autistica, which funds medical research into autism. And last year, it spent $1.5 million on its scientific work, and current research priorities set by the autistic community have to do with physical health, epilepsy, helping those with complex needs, and employment. And some of Autistica's work is pure research, most is applied research. One of the examples of the latter is the DARE project. It stands for Discover Autism Research Employment and aims to help employers attract and retain neurodiverse talent. The charity helps to set up gold standard employment schemes. 40% of its staff, including the chief executive, are themselves autistic. All my speaking fees and book sales go to Autistica, and you can learn more from their own presentation later today. Autism costs Britain a staggering $10 billion a year in lost employment. And we seek to bring that figure down and to enable those with autism to move from claiming benefit to paying income tax. People with autism have the same drive to work and derive the same pleasure and boost to their self-esteem from meaningful employment as the best of us. As Temple Grandin put it, without work, no matter how big or small the job, life would become small and unsatisfying. She ought to know, she, as well as being one of the best-known autism advocates in the United States, she's a highly successful scientist, animal behaviorist, and consultant to the livestock industry. Some aspects of work remain exceptionally challenging for people on the autism spectrum. One is the recruitment process itself. We want to ensure standard recruitment and working practices are more accessible and to develop specialist employment support that works for autistic people. Another is that for many of us, work, whatever else it may be, is a social affair. Most of us enjoy that. The workplace is where we can meet friends. I met the love of my life at work. And the higher up the employment scale, the more social one is generally expected to be. Even in these days of working from home, it's this enforced sociability which presents the greatest difficulty for autistic people. Those on the autistic spectrum face many obstacles to employment, and one of them is the attitude of the rest of us, a product of ignorance and, frankly, prejudice. We need to stop making up stories about people before we know them, the very definition of bias. And how many of us are comfortable with people different from ourselves? It's never wise to claim freedom from prejudice. Unconscious bias is within us all. My life experience has made me a passionate advocate of diversity. At a time when the country is short of talent, it makes sense to recruit from the widest possible pool of workers. And diversity brings benefits not just to the country as a whole, but to the individual employers. My dream is of a more equal, inclusive, and resilient post-pandemic world. I identify with the powerless and cherish diversity in all its forms. People differ in so many ways. There are the obvious differences of age, race, sex, and physical and mental abilities. They're the secondary differences of nationality, religion, language skills, and so on. And there are differences, perhaps the most important. These differences enrich us, and they enrich me. I celebrate diversity and try to practice acceptance and to make available the resources for it to flourish. I ally myself to those less fortunate than me, to educate myself to the issues and then unlearn and relearn myself to be a full human being. Thank you. Let It Go is my memoir. It's not an autobiography. It has much more emphasis on the things that were important to me, as distinct from on Thursday afternoon it rained and I went shopping. It was written originally in 2012, was revised the last 3 chapters in 2019. It's been published in German and a Spanish version is coming out. I'm enormously proud of it. It encapsulates so much of what I feel about the world, about life, about values, about things. And it also has my life story. There'll be a link to how to purchase this book coming soon. The other book, which is quite a different kettle of fish, beautifully bound, it was shortlisted for a design award, is called So to Speak, and is an anthology of some 30 of my speeches over the past 40 years on a variety of topics that are inspiring, that are historic interest, that really gives quite a nuanced, 3-dimensional picture of me and my life. Again, this is done entirely on behalf of Autistica for a minimum donation of £25.
Dame Stephanie, thank you so much. You're a real inspiration to us all. Like you, I met the love of my wife at work. I also have an autistic son, and I've worked with neurodiverse colleagues. And for me, the point you made about believing in people, believing that they can be successful is so important. In my experience, if you expect the best from people, invariably they rise to your expectations. Whereas on the contrary, if you expect them to fail, they pick up on that and they spend their time worrying rather than performing. So I think that applies to everyone and to neurodiverse colleagues especially. So thank you. I mentioned earlier that we have been working as GAIN with our founder members and experts in neurodiversity to put together our membership offer. The services that will enable you to maximize the value of neurodiversity, secure the workforce of the future, and ensure future competitiveness by matching the talent needs you have with the skills of neurodiverse individuals. From my experience setting up the neurodiverse program at BP, I think it's excellent, and I'd like to introduce some of my GAIN colleagues to you to share that with you now. Immediately afterwards, 2 of our partners, Lee Corliss from Wrangham and Joe Thorpe from Chrysalis, will share 2 critical aspects of how to create workplaces where neurodiverse colleagues can thrive and do their best work. But first, I'm delighted to introduce you to Vic Masonis, our new GAIN General Manager. Over to you, Vic.
I'm proud to be a member of GAIN, and I'm really excited to start pushing forward the changes that I've benefited from until they become a norm in the whole industry.
After more than 50 years in the insurance industry, I am really delighted to be part of GAIN not just because I think it will do a great deal for the talent needs of the industry and, of course, for the neurodiverse people who have those talents, which are so underused at the moment, but because I think it's an opportunity for the industry of which I'm so proud, but which is so often maligned, to really take the lead in an area way ahead of most of the other sectors that normally get the limelight.
I'm absolutely thrilled to be a part of GAIN. GAIN has been a long journey for me because I have got an autistic daughter, and she was late diagnosed. She's now 50, and I've seen her talent go to waste from a corporate point of view, which is a great shame. In the last 2 years, following the pandemic, we really all as corporates began to realise that not one size fits all, that people operate in different ways, and that actually our industry can benefit hugely from a diverse workforce. I was 30 years in executive search, and for many years I have looked at bringing diverse talent into the industry. I'm now thrilled that we're at the moment where we can actually support the industry in this, and as Laurie says, really shine as an industry sector.
I'm really, really excited about being involved in GAIN for a number of reasons, but probably the number one reason is that as a sector-wide initiative, I'm really excited about seeing how we can build capacity across a whole area, a whole industry. We can community build and share, and we'll see an enormous impact, not only for individuals, but for the industry itself, the individuals within it, and for the companies. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to see how that journey goes.
It's a huge privilege to be involved in GAIN. I feel so excited about what we're going to achieve here. We're changing the system, and that's good for business, it's good for the economy, and it's good for the hundreds of thousands of autistic and neurodiverse people whose talent is currently going to waste.
I'm Vic, General Manager at GAIN. I'm autistic, and until a few years ago, I'd struggled to find a role where my needs were supported. After finally finding a workplace that supported me in Swiss Re, I went from surviving to thriving and was able to put my energy into advancing the cause of neurodiversity in my office. The connection I made with GAIN felt like a natural next step in my journey. It gave me the opportunity to help provide a roadmap to success for the industry as a whole and guide companies on the right path to supporting neurodiversity in the workplace. At GAIN, we aim to use structured benchmarking processes to show you a realistic view of where your company currently sits and to help guide you each step of the way as you learn better strategies, culture practices, and organisational processes. It will help you build a productive, happy, fulfilling career path for neurodivergent people whose talents are broad and widely under-recognised. I would first like to introduce Stuart Pollard, Lead on Partners for GAIN, who will explore bringing industry-specific training and education for management, staff, and the wider workforce.
Okay, GAIN's work with partners will be working with experts in the areas of neurodiversity, employability, community building and research to create opportunities for neurodiverse talent within the insurance sector. We're going to be providing resources and services to fill the talent gap and build capacity within organisations and make them better for everyone. The plan is that we will provide resources for all members that will be co-created with our partners, and they will be available to all members when they become members and go through our initial onboarding process. That will be a range of baseline materials and resources that will be available to particular people within organisations at human resources and policy making and CEO level, but also for all members of staff as appropriate. As we move forward, and as GAIN learns more about what you need as an organisation, the barriers that you're facing and what your priorities are, we will look to facilitate and broker relationships between you and our partners and work alongside you with those partners in order to develop more bespoke programs, projects and strategies for you to develop your neuro-inclusive practices.
Thank you, Stuart. I will now hand over to Barbara Schonhofer, co-chair of GAIN, to introduce how we plan to increase talent for companies through meaningful careers for neurodivergent individuals.
Thank you very much, Vic, and hello, everyone. Look, it takes a ecosystem to accelerate the changes needed to bring hiring practices when recruiting and retaining diverse talent. At GAIN, we provide access to resources and training for your directors and hiring managers, team leaders, and your HR partners to acquire the knowledge needed to support both new and existing neurodivergent employees. Working with multiple partners covering recruitment, occupational psychology, and work placement adjustments, our aim is to make sure you have a comprehensive range of guidance and the relevant connections to support effective recruitment and onboarding of neurodiverse talent. We also offer you the chance to participate in recruitment pilot schemes, giving you access to a reservoir of untapped neurodiverse talent through our growing community and neurodiverse network of individuals, all seeking meaningful work-life opportunities in our part of financial services. Thank you very much, Vic.
Thank you, Barbara. I would now like to introduce Laurie Edmonds, co-chair of GAIN, who will share how GAIN plans to build a community to support businesses and the neurodiverse workforce. Over to you, Laurie.
Thank you, Vic. The promotion of company-run neurodiversity events held by GAIN and by the people in the community and in our partners will be one of the main benefits that businesses will be able to get from becoming a member of GAIN. For those able to commit to being a leader in this radically important change, access to a member interest group where you'll be able to meet your peers in other like businesses and in other like roles and help share the conversation and become a driver of the change, which everyone believes is in the best interests of the businesses as well as the individuals. And of course, neurodiverse people generally is one of the key things that will happen. We will also be running larger scale educational and networking events as we launch more advanced services generally. And we'll develop an annual awards scheme, which, along with other ways in which you can benchmark the progress you're making so that you're aware of how you stand and how your business is becoming a leader in the transformation which will see neurodiverse people and the talent they bring become much more commonplace in our industry.
Thank you, Laurie. Finally, I would like to introduce Danae Lehman-Hill, Research Lead for GAIN, who will share how GAIN will develop research and understanding to fill the talent gap and prepare businesses for the future.
Hi, I'm Danae Lehman-Hill. I've got many years of experience of running a successful employability program for autistic people, and I'm really proud to be responsible for GAIN's research workstream. We want to make sure GAIN's focus is led by data and continually refined as data reveals new insights. We intend to make a meaningful contribution to the D&I agenda and influence policy and practice to make a sustainable change. We want to understand the talent gap within these sectors. We also want to understand the industry baseline in proactively attracting, hiring, and supporting autistic and neurodiverse employees. And ultimately, we want to assess the effectiveness of interventions initiated by GAIN and GAIN partners. By partnering with us, employers will help us build this evidence base. You'll also have the opportunity to participate in more in-depth research, and you'll benefit from a continuous feedback process showing you the positive impact on your business of the changes you're making.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you're all as excited as we are about this and about the opportunities we have if we can all pull together and bring this forward. If you want to find out more about our membership, please sign up and visit gaintogether.org/sign up.
My name is Lee Corliss, and I'm a Senior Vice President, very long title, of Sales and Partner Relationships at Wrangham Consultants. So I look after EMEA and APAC. I guess I've always known that I thought differently and I acted differently to others when I was younger. I was very good at recognizing patterns in numbers and had a compelling drive to complete everything I start, to the point that it annoyed everybody around me. I also knew that I viewed my feelings differently, so they never came naturally to me. I had to learn how to react in certain situations, and basically felt like I was acting most of the time. And then when I hit my 30s, my wife and I decided I should seek answers to why I felt I was different. I also had an autistic son, so a lot of the traits that were seen in him were seen in me. So fast forward 4.5 years of that process, I finally received the diagnosis that I was on the autism spectrum, and more directly with Asperger's syndrome. Since that day, I've really used that as a positive to really drive and support and develop workplaces to become more neurodiverse friendly. I encourage neurodivergent individuals to seek employment. I obviously, as I've just said, have the passion because my son's now of a working age, so I really want him to have a future, and his friends and people that he associates with that have the condition as well. That, you know, they all deserve a future in the workplace. I've had many challenges to get where I've got to, particularly since actually disclosing to one or two employers. But actually, once I found a really supportive employer, I've been really able to push my career on. And I have years of experience working within the financial, technology and recruitment industries. And I built a great reputation in designing and leading one of the best autism at work programs that's now a neurodiversity at work program in the world. And I enjoy sharing those best practices with other companies. My current role now is I'm Senior Vice President of Sales and Partner Development at Wrangham Consultants here in the UK. Wrangham is a global company, workforce solutions. We are a minority, female and disability-owned company that really focuses in on partnering with our clients, with workplaces, to really create an inclusive environment for everybody to thrive, not just autistic, neurodiverse, or disabled individuals. You know, we work very closely with large and small companies, developing opportunities to strengthen programs that they're looking to build, that makes them inclusive, that makes them be able to tap into talent that's out there. Much of the talent that we sort of partner with and we're looking to bring in have just not had the opportunity. So the other side of what I do is really work closely with not-for-profits, third parties, anybody working with the job centres, etc., to really find that untapped talent, support them to be ready for work, and actually then use our technology of our source-abled program to be able to match them to roles, and really work hard in not only finding them roles, but then ensuring that it's sustainable for them. So we continue to partner not only with them, but with the companies to ensure that what they do gets embedded, and that actually in 3 or 4 years' time, the companies have sustainable programs where they're able to just say it's part of our DNA. You know, we hire people no matter what for their talent, no matter their background, no matter if they have a disability or if they're autistic or they're neurodivergent. And this is, you know, the real aim of one of the reasons that I came to join Wrangham, was because that whole culture and really wanting to spread empathy and inclusion through all companies is really embedded in what I do, and it's certainly exactly the same as Wrangham. We just need more employers to embrace a culture of empathy, acceptance, and inclusion, and that's my biggest task at the moment. I would say the biggest challenge right now is we know there's lots of candidates out there, and we know that employers are struggling to find those candidates. So our challenge is, how do we match those individuals? How do we continue to find the right talent that suits the right jobs? And that's where our source-abled IT comes in, and our source-abled team working closely with the talent, with third-party providers. But we do need more employers who are saying that they're struggling to come forward, and really then we can help them find the talent, match the talent, and support the talent into their organisation, making them a more inclusive employer.
Hello everyone, my name's Jo Throp. I'm Clinical Director at Chrysalis. We are neurological occupational therapists. Today I've been asked to talk about understanding and accessing support within the workplace. And specifically, I'm going to talk about disclosure. So I've been asked to talk about accessing support in the workplace. So I feel we need to start at the beginning. Disclosure. It's a big topic. No doubt, if you are an employer, your mind goes straight to employment law or reasonable adjustments. But if you are the person, disclosure means something else entirely. In my experience of over 25 years of working with people with neurological conditions, the word disclosure is much more personal. And it is from this perspective that I'm going to talk today. Considering the act and process of disclosure is essential because it's the starting point for everything else. I'm not sure about you, but the word disclosure makes me uncomfortable. There's a pressure to it, a feeling that I'm exposing something of vital importance, or maybe a secret that should not be shared. Either way, my gut feeling is telling me that disclosure is something best avoided. I'm not alone. And maybe those of you with a neurodiverse diagnosis or suspicions of such feel the same too. A study in 2006 found that around 40% of employees with impairments did not disclose their condition to their employer. A study by Harvard found it was as high as 76%. The disclosure was viewed as a risky endeavour. But why is this? Well, if we think more deeply about disclosure, it is possibly not the act itself that is concerning. It's the bit before, our thoughts and feelings and our sense of control. It's past experiences and the unknown future. It's concern about the response and fears about the perception of others and the potential consequences. It's scary because it's big. But what to disclose, and what would I say? Is it about disclosing a diagnosis? Well, a neurodiverse condition is neurologically atypical patterns of thoughts or behaviour, not neurotypical. I'm not sure that helps with any form of diagnostic disclosure, as what does it mean in the everyday? And to compound our problems, the definition of neurotypical is the reverse of neurodiverse, with the caveat that, shockingly, neurotypical individuals often assume their experiences of the world is either the only one or the correct one. So disclosure in this context means exposing your true self to others who believe their view of the world is the only one. So, is it about explaining what it's like to be you? The big, "this is who I am" statement. If we are being candid, neurodiverse and neurotypical, human beings side by side, could any of us in this room today disclose who we are, define our strengths and challenges and what they mean in the context of work? How all the other stuff, like our thoughts, feelings, roles, Relationships and environments impact our worries, fears, aspirations, and potential. Living with a neurodiverse diagnosis makes it hard to pin all that down. It can be hard to find the words. Often, it's easier to describe or disclose feelings. I feel anxious at break time when the canteen is busy, or I get overwhelmed when too many people are talking at the same time, or I lack confidence as I'm not coping with the office restructure. But describing feelings doesn't do it justice, and mainstream well-being mental health solutions often fail to help. Or maybe others in the workplace are quick to describe behaviours. Why do you make a huge fuss over tiny mistakes? Why do you ignore us when we're talking to you? Or why do you take ages to answer questions? Describing behaviours is very personal. Typically, it causes strained and challenging relationships, and solutions are not easy because the cause is poorly understood. So is it about seeing ourselves and our colleagues more clearly? Creating workplace cultures where disclosure is considered less risky, where the foundations are laid from the get-go? It is about making sure we're all wearing the same glasses, so we all view the challenges and opportunities through the same lenses. We then have a shared understanding. The result is environments and relationships that cultivate confident employees and enlightened employers. Research supports this. Employees who feel confident to disclose their needs at work are 30% more engaged in career satisfaction, aspirations, and confidence. But a diagnosis like autism, among many other neurodiverse conditions, is complex and multifaceted. It's hard to define and hard to understand. It's slippery. You need help. That's why Chrysalis is here. As neuro-occupational therapists, we understand the brain in all its complexity. We know the key to understanding neuroconditions lies in understanding function. Our magic key to disclosure is understanding what neurodiverse means in the everyday, looking in detail at the person, and with those who they trust, understanding what it's like to be them, thinking about work activities and the work environment, how routines, habits, and roles impact the living them. Chrysalis is about removing the risk and creating a shared view, specialist assessments and support that bring clarity to complex situations, rehabilitation and solution-focused approaches that uncover potential and overcome barriers, bringing people together to collaborate so we raise each other up. We're not all the same. This is me. Who are you? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jo and Lee, for sharing your perspectives on those critical aspects to create workplaces where neuro-inclusive behaviours help people to do their best. For me, your comments underline the importance of creating the trusted relationships where people are confident to share their personal work styles and their strengths so that teams and supervisors can support them and benefit from their abilities. And the benefits I've seen from the different thinking can really make a breakthrough for teams. Thank you also to Vic, Barbara, Danae, Laurie and Stuart for your discussion on how organisations can start on the right foot to an inclusive neurodiverse workforce with GAIN. And I hope you agree with me. They have come up with a great membership package that will help you maximise the benefit of neurodiversity, secure the workforce of the future and enhance your competitiveness by matching the needs you have with the capabilities of neurodiverse talent. Next, as regulatory oversight is so important to our industry, I'm delighted to introduce Georgina Philippou from the FCA. And Georgina is going to discuss with us the place for neurodiversity within the regulatory environment for inclusion and diversity.
I'm very happy to be here today to talk about neurodiversity, an aspect of diversity and inclusion, which is gaining increasing attention and which we're learning to recognise not as a disability, but as a cognitive distinction in both senses of the word. So neurodiversity can be looked at not just as a D&I issue, but also as a business and transformation tool and asset. And more of that in a few minutes. But let me start by explaining why, as regulators, we, along with the Bank of England and the Prudential Regulation Authority, have an important role in promoting D&I in financial services. We have two starting points. Number one, the financial services sector is not diverse and inclusive. And number two, diversity and inclusion is a good thing for firms and for the consumers and markets they serve. Let me give you a few figures to demonstrate the first starting point, the lack of diversity in financial services. The latest update on the Parker Review, which recommended about 5 years ago that by the end of December 2021, all FTSE 100 companies should have appointed at least one ethnic minority member, shows that most of them have. 94 out of 100 have done that. Now, this is good news. However, most people of colour are in NED positions, and only 6 CEOs come from a minority ethnic background and only 3 chairs. In October 2021, Reuters analysed 21 major financial institutions and found that the major banks had made only a slight dent in their gender pay gaps since the previous year, while several insurers went backwards. And women in banking and finance calculate that at the present rates of progress, it will take 30 years to reach gender parity in financial services. Now, this lack of diversity must feed through into outcomes for consumers. For example, the Citizens' Advice Report on Discriminatory Pricing in Insurance, published on the 22nd of March, highlighted the risk of discrimination based on race and raises important and challenging questions for the insurance industry. And last month's report from the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute looked at the provision of essential services, including financial services, for people with mental health problems. It found that only 29% of people with mental health problems say that essential service providers anticipate their needs. All of these facts and figures run counter to the literature, which says that D&I is a good thing for financial services firms and their customers and markets, that it can have beneficial business outcomes. Research demonstrates that diversity and inclusion can lead to better outcomes in risk management, to better conduct and therefore lower regulatory fines, to healthier working cultures and increased well-being, and to more creativity and innovation. It makes it easier to attract and retain talent. The diversity of thought that comes with demographic diversity and with true inclusion can lead to better decision-making, and decision-making that reflects the needs of different communities. All of that explains why we, together with the bank and the PRA, published our discussion paper on D&I in regulated firms last summer. We will publish a consultation paper this summer, which is another opportunity to join the conversation. And about 6 months after that, we'll publish a policy statement, which is the thing that sets out the new rules, requirements and guidance that we expect firms to abide by. Now, the outcomes that we want to see from this work are clear and simple. We do want to see more diverse representation in regulated firms, but not just for its own sake. This isn't a numbers game. Through inclusion and diversity of thought, we want to see the benefits of greater representation feed through into better consumer and market outcomes, into products and services which are designed for a diverse range of consumers and which reach them in a fair and accessible way. And we want to see better data collection and more transparency of data, because without the data, we are nothing when it comes to D&I. So our key message is that we take D&I seriously and we expect regulated firms to do the same. Ask yourself, if the proposals in our discussion paper were to make it into a new set of rules and guidance at the end of this year or the beginning of next, how ready would your firm be? We are well aware that as an employer, we're on a journey ourselves when it comes to diversity and inclusion. You can see it in our annual diversity report, you can see it in our ethnicity action plan, you can see it in our pay gap data. And that's why we started this conversation with a discussion paper, rather than going straight to consultation paper stage. We wanted a genuinely open conversation with as much time as possible for people to give us feedback. We don't have all the answers, but we are part of an ecosystem which can play an important role in driving positive change. And we have a statutory responsibility to get things right for consumers and markets. In this context, it's important to know that this drive for D&I in financial services hasn't come out of nowhere. It aligns with our long-standing work on treating customers fairly and on vulnerable consumers and fair pricing, and with our emerging work on the new consumer duty. And of course, as ESG rises up the agenda, it will take D&I with it. Now, you would have noticed that I haven't so far said anything specifically about neurodiversity, mainly because data on how neurodiverse financial services is, in terms of management, employees or customers, just isn't really there. Secondly, maybe also because neurodivergence is not specifically called out as a protected characteristic in the Equality Act 2010. This in itself raises D&I challenges. Some neurodivergent colleagues might recognise themselves in the definition of disability in the Equality Act, and some may not. The repercussions of this are that employers might not understand the application of the Act to neurodivergent colleagues, and those neurodivergent colleagues might feel that they don't belong to any particular group and might not feel included in any corporate initiatives aimed at the disabled, for example. And thirdly, maybe because neurodiversity can be invisible some or all of the time, or successfully masked some or all of the time. Despite or because of this, some of the feedback to our DP has urged us not to forget the importance of neurodiversity in financial services. ACAS figures say that about 1 in 7 people is neurodivergent, but neurodivergent people are one of the groups in society most likely to be unemployed or underemployed. ONS figures show that just 22% of autistic adults, for example, are in any kind of employment. This is doubly troubling because for many neurodivergent people, employment can be helpful by providing structure and purpose and social interaction. However, I think there are 3 reasons for optimism. The first is that there are good reasons to employ neurodivergent people. The second is that there are some very simple, low-cost things you can do to bring in and get the best from neurodivergent people. And the third is that the responses to our DP show that there is some really good D&I practice out there. On the first, those who employ neurodivergent people say that they are detail-oriented, analytical, good at pattern recognition and information processing. They thrive on predictability, they are tenacious and loyal. They can be great at innovation, systems thinking, and problem solving. This often leads people to conclude that neurodivergent people are therefore great for filling the STEM talent gap. But there are also great examples of neurodivergent people thriving in the creative industries, especially art, performing art and music. And studies show that autistic professionals can be up to 140% more productive than the average employee when they are in a job that matches their skill sets and interests. The experience of EY, which has 300 people in 13 neurodiversity centres of excellence around the world, suggests that neurodiversity has added about $1 billion of value to its business through new solutions, media recognition and branding, stakeholder relations, and so on. And that millions of hours have been freed up through those new solutions. They have also found really high retention rates among neurodivergent colleagues, all of which is good for business. The Future Skills Report from the Financial Services Skills Council in March identifies 5 skills gaps for the industry: data analytics and insights, software development, creative thinking, data literacy, and coaching. And at the risk of stereotyping and pigeonholing neurodivergent colleagues, it is clear that they can make an important contribution to filling these skills gaps. On the second point about doing things to encourage and keep a neurodiverse workforce, forward-thinking organisations are looking at their employee lifestyle and making changes. Sometimes these are minor adjustments, and most of them are good for the neurodivergent and the neurotypical. Things like making it clear that neurodivergent people are welcome to apply for jobs, drafting job descriptions and interview questions so that they focus on essential skills, providing interview questions in advance so that you're testing knowledge and experience rather than the ability to make things up on the spot, hiring and training in small cohorts to create instant communities, pairing people up with an office buddy and a counsellor, providing reading materials in advance of meetings, appraising quality of work and outputs rather than more subjective things such as polish, and designing working environments with neurodiversity inclusion in mind, which is something that we did when we built our new offices in Stratford a few years ago. It must be clear to you that all of these things are good business practice, but they also require strong management and leadership. As leaders of a neurodiverse workforce, we'll need to be able to be clear and succinct about the purpose of our work. We need to run our meetings in a structured and inclusive way. We need to be prepared to receive honest and direct questions and feedback. And when we give feedback, we need to be succinct and intentional. We need to be prepared for leading people who might be quicker than us at finding solutions to complex problems. And neurotypical people need to be active allies, raising awareness, checking that policies, processes and systems are inclusive and that neurodiverse colleagues are involved in their design and maintenance, calling out bad behaviours and so on. On the third point about good practices, one of the joys of doing a discussion paper is that respondents sometimes use it as an opportunity to tell you about all the good things that they're already doing, which I welcome. And 3 things have really stuck in my memory from those responses. First, reverse mentoring. For example, a junior colleague who is neurodivergent can mentor a more senior colleague who is neurotypical as a way of sharing experiences. Secondly, shadow boards, where boards made up of more junior and more diverse colleagues contribute to board decisions, whether by attending board meetings or giving views on board papers. And third, getting the customer in the room, which is about literally or metaphorically getting customer views and experiences actively fed into strategic decisions about the design and delivery of products and services. And getting all of this right is particularly important in a challenging hybrid working environment. But the bottom line is that as leaders and as an industry, we need to create psychologically safe environments. This brings me neatly back to the unique role of regulators. The FCA is a conduct regulator, and as part of our long-standing work on culture in financial services firms, we have emphasised the importance of creating speak up, listen up cultures, of creating psychologically safe environments, because we recognise that these are important contributory factors when it comes to better outcomes for consumers of financial services.
Georgina, thank you so much. That was just brilliant. Your insights on neurodiversity as a cognitive difference that is good for firms and the customers and markets they serve to enhance products and services and make them more accessible. Very insightful words. I also Georgina, valued you talking about the good reasons to employ neurodiverse colleagues and the low-cost adjustments to make them successful. And the adjustments you mentioned, like sending agendas before meetings, I think those are good for all employees. And it's great to hear as well about the pockets of good practice across the industry already. So thank you. We will shortly be breaking, and after the break, we'll invite you to join one of 3 workshops that we are holding. And those are going to focus on talent, the good practice for recruiting, empowering and supporting neurodiverse talent. On education, exploring education and training as the route to a thriving, inclusive workforce. And networking, the key components of building a supportive community for neurodiverse individuals and business. We think those are critical topics, and I hope you have an interest in talent, education and networking, and would look forward to your participation. But first we're going to roll into, before we roll into the break, we'll go to a poll, and I'd love to invite you to participate. We have 2 questions that I'd like to invite you to answer. The first is, which outcomes would you most like to see from working with GAIN? And the second is, how can GAIN accelerate your journey to a neuro-inclusive workplace? They're both multiple choice, and you can take part either on your mobile phone or your web browser by following the link on the screen or clicking the QR code. We will review the results a bit later this morning. So thank you for your participation in that, and we will now go to a break for about 10 minutes, and I'll see you again at about past. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you are all enjoying the Expo so far and finding it interesting and importantly useful. Thanks everyone who's taken part in the poll, and we will look at the results later. So there's still time to participate if you haven't already. And we've heard tremendous enthusiasm and energy and intent to get after this, but perhaps some uncertainty about where to start and what to do. And you mentioned research, giving us evidence-based information on what to do. You also mentioned community and you know the ability to talk with other colleagues, different companies that have done this successfully, and learn from their successes as well as their learnings too. I think both extremely important, and I know Laurie will return to community a bit later this morning. So thank you, thank you all. Thanks everyone for all of that. It sounds like some fantastic workshops. So I mentioned we would hear this morning for some major players in the industry. I'd now like to introduce one of those, Peter Hamilton. Peter is Head of Market Engagement for Zurich and the Disability and Cabinet Office Ambassador for Insurance. Peter will share with us how Zurich have created a neuro-inclusive culture. Peter, thank you, and over to you.
Hello, I'm Peter Hamilton, Head of Market Engagement at Zurich, and I'm delighted to be involved in this GAIN Expo. I view neurodiversity primarily through 3 different lenses: as a grandfather to a wonderful neurodivergent granddaughter, as a manager within a large global financial services company, and also as the government's ambassador for disability and access for the insurance industry. And I'd like to weave those 3 perspectives into 3 short sections here, to reflect briefly on why it's important to have a neurodiverse workforce, to share some of the things that Zurich have done and are doing, and why I think GAIN is such a force for good in our industry. From a purely personal perspective, I want to do everything I can to make my granddaughter's eventual transition to the world of work as easy as I can. And it's a fact that those on the autism spectrum do find it harder to find work and to stay in work, but we can help as an industry to change that. And it's the right thing to do socially, but also commercially. There are really clear benefits from having a diverse workforce that reflects the profile of the customers we're looking to serve, whether that's across areas such as gender, ethnicity, or disability. And having a neurodiverse workforce brings additional benefits. It's tapping into a valuable talent pool, often with a very different skill set. There's an excellent book that came out last year by Simon Baron-Cohen, one of the leading experts on neurodiversity. It's called The Pattern Seekers: How Autism Drives Human Invention. And he makes the case powerfully that the great driver of our advancement as a species through the arts and science and technology has been autistic behavior. So autistic minds can spot patterns in data and systems that other people miss. And I think insurance is an obvious industry where the ability systematically to see and make sense of patterns is a really valuable and differentiating attribute. The neurodiverse, often evidence systematic approaches and logical analysis and pattern recognition, high concentration levels, making them really well suited for roles in areas such as analytics and data governance and complex software development. Although, of course, it is important not just to rely on overly simplistic categorizations, because I think every candidate is going to bring different skills to us. So part of the challenge is education and helping those in the industry to understand the diverse talents and insights someone with autism can bring. And I hope my role as Disability Ambassador for Insurance can help here. For those who aren't aware, the Government Disability Unit has appointed ambassadors across 18 different sectors, including, for example, arts, transport, education, housing, hospitality, retail, and insurance. The Disability Unit's own website talks in terms of these ambassadors as leaders in their industry who want to make private sector services more accessible. They're effective change makers who help to drive improvements in the accessibility and quality of services and facilities for disabled people. They lead change and promote best practice from within. Ambassadors work to ensure businesses are doing all they can to support their disabled customers and employees. And these are voluntary positions held for a maximum of 3 years. So there's a focus on access to products and services that we offer as insurers, but also I do think it's really important to focus on the access to insurance as a career. And to do that, we need to think carefully about areas such as processes for recruitment and retention. I think we need to do more to encourage and benefit from unique ways of thinking to tap into what is a very material and special talent pool. So to share some of the things that Zurich have done and are doing, it's worth perhaps putting into context some of the broader work we do on disability. We've got a Disability Confident Leader accreditation, which does reflect our focus on improving access to insurance to disabled customers and employees. And it's really encouraging, I think, to see more insurance firms on this journey, both insurers and advisor firms. We have an accessibility and inclusion network. It's an employee resource group set up to promote the inclusion of employees with disabilities to better understand needs so that we can take practical action to meet them. And within that, we've got a group that focuses expressly and exclusively on neurodiversity. We've got a work skills program that provides a tailored program for people who've been unemployed for 6 months or more. And we do find in a large proportion are disabled in some way. So we're pleased to have supported many of those into permanent employment. And in terms of recruitment, I think we're beginning to be, although there's more we can do, much more thoughtful. So we look at job adverts. Do we really have to be looking for good team players on every role? We need to be alert to making sure the process is clear, communicated in advance. And is an interview actually the right process? Can we provide topics or questions in advance and maybe give the neurodiverse person a real chance to shine? So, for example, we stopped using group exercises as part of our graduate recruitment, as that unnecessarily disadvantages some of the neurodiverse candidates we were seeing. One of the other steps we've taken is a new global service agreement with Auticon, who are an IT and data consultancy and a social enterprise that exclusively recruits consultants with autism. From a retention perspective, we've got reasonable adjustments processes in place, and we do provide manager training in disability confidence. But ultimately, it's all about, I think, ensuring that individuals are in the right environment where they can use the strengths instead of people negatively focusing on perceived deficits. And I think if we can do that, we bring societal and business benefits. That said, I think collectively we've much more to do, which is why GAIN is so important. I think it's a real force for good, bringing together, sharing insight from lived experience is a broad and influential network of people, wide and growing range of resources, and it runs collaborative cross-industry events that I personally benefited from, and it encourages those attending to share ideas and experiences. And as individuals, more than ever now, we're pushed, most obviously through social media, towards people who hold similar views and maybe think the same way as us. And I'm not sure any of this is really very healthy. And GAIN can help insurers benefit from the creativity of those who may see the world in a different way. We need to be brave, perhaps, take some risks, perhaps, but ultimately, surely, that's what insurance is all about.
Peter, amazing words, and sincere thanks to you. It's inspiring, I think, to hear from companies that are taking practical steps and achieving successes. And I know you said you've got much more to do, but clearly you're also demonstrating through your actions that achieving success with neurodiverse colleagues for the benefits they bring to the company and to society is absolutely achievable. So, so Peter, thank you, and thank you for your leadership and inspiration. Okay, so so next, time for the big reveal on the poll, and thanks to all of you who took part and voted. If we could bring the results up, fantastic. So, to recap the question, which outcomes would you most like to see from working with GAIN? Top voted is greater employee engagement across the whole organisation. And we've heard that, I think, multiple times throughout the day from Georgina, Johnny. I think you spoke about this in the feedback from your workshop as well. The benefits of creating a more inclusive culture, some of the adjustments that help neurodiverse people to thrive clearly benefit everybody, you know, and it's great to see that recognised, and I genuinely believe, you know, that inclusion has benefits to everyone, neurotypical as well as neuroinclusive. I'll just comment on the second one as well. Hiring talent to fill critical roles. We know there's a real talent shortage in the industry, indeed in the country, and we know, you know, neurodiverse colleagues, potential colleagues, as a real perhaps resource pool that's not tapped as much as it could be. So. I think a huge opportunity for us as an industry to fill some of our critical talent roles and tap into some of the benefits that we heard, you know, such as the I think was mentioned 140% greater productivity, according to the research in the Harvard Business Review. So thanks to everyone who took part in the poll, and we may leave the poll open for people who wish to take part and give us your feedback later. So thank you. So our last speaker is one of our co-chairs of GAIN, Laurie Edmonds, and Laurie will try to bring us to a close, maybe by summarising some key points, but and also talking about some next steps. So Laurie, over to you. Thank you.
GAIN started about 2 years ago with a group of individuals who all believe quite passionately that there's a talent gap in our industry which neurodiverse people can help to fill. It's all very well, though, about a dozen committed people believing that, because to quote Mandy Rice Davis, they would, wouldn't they? The big question was whether the industry believed that was also the case. So just about a year ago, after we got ourselves organised, we had 2 video conferences with more than 30 major organisations from across the insurance and investment related sectors of financial services. At the first, we described our belief that there's a match between the talent needs of the industry and the underused talents of neurodiverse people. And At the first of those meetings, we asked 3 questions. First, did the attendees believe that this match is valid and that steps should be taken to make it work? Second, is now the time to try and do something to make that match, or should it wait until other inclusivity and diversity measures which are being put in place across the industry have been done, rather than crowd the space? And thirdly, if it is to be done, would it be best done by business to business, one at a time, or would it be best as an industry initiative? Well, the answers were clear and unanimous, literally nem con. First, something should be done. Second, it should be done now, not wait for other initiatives to mature fully, partly because there's such an overlap between them. If you deal with one, you're well on the way to dealing with the other. And third, it should be an industry-wide initiative. Doing it on a business-by-business basis would be too slow. So at the second workshop, we tried to answer the question, if something should be done, what is that something? What should it be? And from the output of that workshop came the proposition that we put to you today. To be a hub to enable businesses and neurodiverse individuals in both to both benefit from much better use of their talents, abilities, and attributes. So we got on and set up the formalities. We've established GAIN as a not-for-profit community interest company. We sought seed funding to enable us to put what had been a completely voluntary effort onto a professional footing. And we're extremely grateful that we got some very substantial businesses to act as our founder funders. Our founder funders are ABI, Aviva, British Insurance Brokers Association, Marsh, Pensions Insurance Corporation, Principal Financial, QBE, Swiss Re, Underwrite Me, and Zurich. Though these are names not to be taken lightly in any endeavour. It was thrilling to get them to back our beliefs. That seed funding has enabled us to engage the amazing Vic Mazonis as our general manager and to set up the services described to you this morning. As a hub, GAIN will not be a big organisation. We're not trying to build an empire, but to make important connections which should be, but currently aren't, being made between the industry and the neurodiverse people. One way of describing how GAIN will work is as a hub. The hub of a wheel which will have 3 spokes and an outer rim. The 3 spokes are all different forms of membership of GAIN. Businesses, who will be corporate members, who will benefit from accessing or using better neurodiverse talent in the way that we've heard described so clearly this morning. Individual members, who will be neurodiverse individuals, and importantly, their family and friends who are so crucial to seeing them succeed, who can bring their talents or have them better used in the industry. Thirdly, service provider partners who have the skills, knowledge, and resources to bring businesses and neurodiverse individuals to be able to make the quite minor adjustments needed to help neurodiverse people best prepare themselves so they find and develop a great career in the industry, which has done so much for me and for so many, and to help neurodiverse people and the businesses that need them find each other. The ring which goes round the outside of the wheel is research and academic work. The understanding and the measurement of impact of the steps taken, which will inform what goes on and the steps taken in each of the 3 spokes. We need to say what all that is likely to cost and how we believe it should be funded. As I say, GAIN is not looking to be a large organisation. The effort will remain largely voluntary, but a full-time presence is needed to make the organisation properly professional able to deliver on its promises, and to build and support the online presence needed to get as many individuals as possible into the network, to spread the costs as widely as possible and as thinly as possible, and support the information base which we'll make available to members of all types. The costing we've done suggests that the annual cost will be of the region of £200,000. We think that's a price worth paying, mainly for the industry to get access to a stream of underused talent it needs and could be seen as leading the way in a field of inclusion and diversity, which is only now being realised as crucial as wider known initiatives such as gender inclusivity or intersectionality. But who should pay for it? We've had long discussions and given much thought to this. Our proposal is that the most logical structure is basically for businesses to pay for it. We think they're the ones who will get the biggest benefit from access to an underused stream of talent. But to explain, corporate members will be able to join us for an annual subscription based on the number of people they employ, which will range between £1,000 and £10,000. I know that these are non-trivial amounts. I know that some people will say that £200,000 for an industry with trillions of pounds under management, that is not much money. As somebody who for many years was an executive or chair of an insurance investment business, I know that you can't just say it's not much. When you come to facing the finance director with your budget, just saying it's only £10,000 will get you kicked out the room. So I know how important it is for us to be able to make a business case. We believe it's a very strong one, but we're not taking anything for granted. But corporate members then somewhere between £1,000 and £10,000 a year to get the range of services which you've had described this morning. Individual membership, on the other hand, will be free. The logic being that this will enable the largest number of people to be built up, and the larger the number of people, the bigger the pool of talent available to the industry. This is a clear business value in the war for talent which we face. It's a business proposition, not a CSR initiative, although it will add greatly to CSR credentials. It's a talent and capability initiative. We thought long and hard about whether partners who are service providers in our third spoke of the type of membership should be asked to contribute. At first, we thought that as GAIN will be a provider of introductions to them, it would be logical for providers of services to contribute in some way. But we decided it's very important that if GAIN does make connections to a service provider, there should be no risk that that connection is seen as having been influenced by GAIN benefiting financially from it. So membership for partners will again carry no subscription or other form of payment. Partners may provide some introductory services to businesses or to individuals without charge as a benefit to those businesses or individuals of them becoming members of GAIN. But using those services will be a matter for the businesses and individuals to decide. GAIN will not be interested in the outcome financially. Finally, research and academic work. We anticipate that members who are involved in research or academic work may well be paid by GAIN. We will particularly be keen to find the funding for new research, especially into being able to measure the impact of the steps taken so as to really lock in evidence of the business case. This may be funded to a limited extent by GAIN itself on the kind of budget I've mentioned, and GAIN is already well embarked on becoming an access point for much existing research and knowledge. But for new projects, there might well be collaborative efforts between members and GAIN and other members who could combine to fund research on important topics on a project-by-project basis. So that's it. We've had many enormously encouraging conversations with the industry over the 2 years since we started working on GAIN. I have never had a conversation when anyone has argued that the time has not come for the small but vital adjustments needed to radically improve the employment prospects of neurodiverse people in the industry, to enable the industry to get access to the talents it really needs. Not just the quotes, the higher end of achievement, but all the way from the post room to the boardroom. Neurodiverse characteristics, not just autism, dyslexia, ADHD, dyspraxia, and the other forms of neurodiversity bring a vital change to the thought processes, which is essential to businesses. So we've had all these wonderfully warm conversations, but the time has come for the businesses who've said this to us, beyond our pioneering group of founder funders, who we very much hope will carry on the journey with us, very crudely, to put the action behind the words and become corporate members of GAIN. To find more about this, please click on the QR code which follows, or visit gaintogether.org/sign up. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie. And I'll just echo your words. We genuinely believe we're onto something huge here, really important for the industry, really important for neurodiverse colleagues, and we sincerely hope that you'll join us. It just remains for me to say thank you. Thank you first to the backroom team that have made this event possible. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you to all the speakers. Absolutely incredible stories and information shared. Brilliant. And thank you to all of you who have joined live or are watching this on recap. We really appreciate your interest in Neurodiversity and your support going forward. So thank you and have a fantastic rest of your day.